Hello, are you awake? If you are, good stuff. So my name is Ryan Kareem, and this is going to be a 4-part series on Agile stuff. We're going to start real basic. We're going to start at what is Agile, where does it come from, what's this Scrum thing, what's this Kanban thing. Then we're going to go on to how do we measure all of this stuff. That's going to be the second video that we're going to get into. And then after that, we're going to do a little bit of a deeper session on each of the standard sort of Scrum events that everyone will be familiar with in Agile and will use. And after that, we're going to get more into how do you actually train Agile coaches? How do you get people to behave and be real Agile coaches in your organization? So you're probably thinking, who's this guy? What's the authority that he's got to kind of tell me these things? So let me just explain and show you a little bit about myself before we get into today's topic. Today's topic, by the way, is what is this Agile thing? What is this Scrum thing? What is this Kanban thing? And what I'm aiming to do is to give you a very quick version of what that actually is, without all the consulting mumbo jumbo, without all the different programs or frameworks or scaling approaches that just are consultants trying to make more money out of people, right? What we're going to do is go real back to basics, and we're going to go back to some basics that no one can disagree with, right? This is the bare bones. This is the fundamentals of Agile. This is what it is at its core. And these are non-debatable, in my opinion. However, if you do have a different opinion, I'm all ears, and I would love to, exchange different ideas on what you think Agile is and Scrum and what Kanban is. So if any strong feelings do pop up for you, please drop your comments down below and let's do some exchange of different ideas and thoughts. Always welcome for that. So who am I? Let's have a quick look. What you can see is this is my LinkedIn profile. So my name is Ryan Kareem. I am an Agile transformation coach by trade. I have worked for myself through my own company for the last over 18 months now. We've had quite a range of different clients, from working with IBM to working with primary schools to working with colleges to working with council services to starting a startup program. And yeah, I'm enjoying that phase, going through that process. I've also got a podcast called Startup Success Students, where we speak with budding entrepreneurs or people that have already kind of made it in their own terms. And we're just trying to learn those lessons, right, and share them as broadly and widely as possible. And what you'll see from here is I've also got a raft of experience working in different corporates, doing Agile transformation at various levels. So at team level, teams of 30 across different locations in different countries, software split across all those different areas too. So it's a nightmare trying to get anything done. I've also applied Agile at scale for a HR division of 70 people, also then stood up a division of 150 people, trained them in it, coached them in it, facilitated them in it, created people that can actually push that system forward without me there. I've worked at one of the hottest fintechs to come out of London, changing the game of how clearing works, clearing payments, clearing houses, if anyone's familiar with that. And then obviously I've gone and done my time year in consulting with IBM, supporting international executives and their teams to get better at what they do for their customers and to have a more harmonious relationship with IBM. So that's kind of me. If you are interested in my book, you can go to abc-agile.com and you can see our book, me and my business partner here. And we're open to Agile consulting arrangements. We see ourselves as expert troubleshooters. So if you're ever stuck, make sure you contact us. And if you are in a position where you need to create your own Agile coaches, this is a fantastic 3-day book that will let you do that. I've also got a startup program, as I mentioned, about growing people's companies quickly with a bespoke range of partnerships that I find and I create for them. And what we can see is, first case study was with a CBD company, and we 3 times their revenue in 10 weeks. So here for what we're actually here for now, which is not to learn about me, but it's to learn about Agile. What is this Agile Scrum Kanban thing? And for most people at this stage, you're probably a little bit bemused, a little bit baffled. You're kind of thinking Agile Scrum Kanban, I'm not sure what this is. Or if you have heard of it, you're kind of curious and you're waiting to see what I think of it. To see whether you agree or disagree, which is a very healthy place to be. To understand anything, you need to go back to its root. So I'd like to just take you back very quickly into the history and where Agile really came from. What context did it emerge from? So in the 1970s, obviously you got to think software at scale was just starting to be teased with by those really advanced agencies of the world. For example, governments, military, NASA, aerospace programs, mostly in America. They were starting to really tease with this idea of software, large software systems. And they would have found it very difficult. It's like the most complex problem they tried to solve with people together, and the old ways of working as teams and giving leadership and giving direction and your expectations of the workplace weren't allowing them to really work most effectively together. And where did they get this way of working from? How did they get a way of working that meant they could not work effectively? Well, ultimately, the same as everyone does, I guess, they didn't have the answers, so they went looking for them. They actually went to the local library, so the story goes, and they found that Winston Royce had published Making the Development of Large Software Systems, fantastic PDF available online, and it breaks down loads of different models and ways of approaching managing the development of large software systems. What you can see in this diagram is waterfall, isn't it, right? Let's do that first stage down to the next stage, blah, 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 all the way to the end. What they're not doing is any feedback, any iteration. There's no learning going on throughout this process. It's just go, 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 go. Yeah, very old school military who, the military now think completely differently. And what you can see in this figure 2, when you look at the paper that Winston Royce published, you see that this comment, right? He believes in this concept, but it's risky and it invites failure. Probably not the one you want to go for then. What we find, that's the 70s, fast forward into late 80s, start of the 90s, there was this application delivery lab, which you should Google and read about. It's very interesting. As technology is starting to emerge, what's happened is the way of working and the way of solving these problems together isn't quite effective for us. So we've got loads of demand, loads of ways to grow our software business and our software companies, but we can't figure out how to actually organize properly around making that growth happen. A very good example is obviously this example here, which is the US Aerospace Defense Shuttle Program. They launched a shuttle in 1982, but they couldn't get the IT updated since the 60s because it was such a big ball of interconnected noise and mess that they had to just leave it as it is, right? Because it kept breaking. They couldn't update it. So that's a long time, isn't it? 22 years to go to live. And obviously in that time, there's a lot of learning in their tech circles that should have been applied. So there's quite clearly a problem that needed to be solved. And there was this explosion in the 90s, therefore, of different ways of solving this problem. And if you imagine this at scale across an industry that's booming, and you're trying to hire people and make sure that everyone's got a consistent kind of known way of working through this crazy complexity of software and computers, which is still relatively new, there's an explosion of different ways of thinking, right? You've got extreme programming. We still use loads of this now, right? In Agile, loads of extreme programming we use. You can see it all there, the stories, the test scenarios, requirements, estimates, spikes. We've still got release planning in some Agile organizations because they haven't cracked that nut yet of how to release at will. And you can see it's all about small releases. So XP was there. You had the Barry Beam model. I've probably not said that right, but Barry Beam model, spiral method. And, it's got to be very similar, hasn't it? In order to plan your stories and look at your requirements, you're looking at your objectives, aren't you? You're looking at your risks. You are looking at how you're going to develop and test it and how you're going to release it. You're going to do all that all up front, aren't you? So they're kind of hand in hand, a lot of these models. Same with the rapid application development, right? Getting the requirements, knowing who the user is, prototyping, iterating, testing. It doesn't have that stated in these other two models, but theoretically that is what they're doing. So it also, then you had Deming, and Deming just blows everything out of the water. You should read this PDF. It's available online and it's amazing. Deming said, slightly different view. The other three models are trying to focus on that problem of how do you actually develop it. Edward Deming's taken one step back and he's saying, how do you, first of all, how do you even think correctly? How do you know that your thinking is true? How do you know if your thinking is true unless you know what it is that you're thinking and then you validate it and see whether it was right? So he was very much a proponent of systemic thinking or scientific thinking, which is also based on experimentation, right? I think this, therefore, if we do this, it will have an impact. How are you going to measure it? When are you going to learn, right? That's what Damon was propagating. He also propagated psychology. This is where intrinsic, extrinsic motivation and the impact on the workforce and people's ability to solve problems in my opinion, first raises its head. And then you have this appreciation that it is one whole system, right? To make one change, you can't just affect one component of the system. You are going to have a ripple effect in the way it all works, right? If you change your tires of your car, what impact does that have on the brakes, for example? Does it make the brakes have to work not so hard, so there's less wear and tear on the brakes? So you think you're changing the tires, but it actually impacts the brakes. In the same way, organizations and teams that are making software, they're making a system within a business that is a system. So he was a very strong advocate of looking at things as interrelated complexity that need to be experimented on. And when you do that, you get variation, and variation comes in two forms. We're going to go more into this in the second video, where we get into more about measures, blah, blah, blah. We'll bring all of this sort of stuff to life. But just so you know, there was an explosion of different approaches, none of which is wrong or right or better than the other necessarily. They all work, they're all effective. However, like I said, it's a problem for trying to manage people, trying to hire people, and then everyone knows a different way of being, way of thinking. It wasn't brought in concisely enough, succinctly enough. And there was probably other ways of developing things too, you know, more than those four, there was lots more. So, however, fast forward 10 years of an industry that's going through rapid experimentation of how to make the thing that they're there to make for their end customer. 16 tech leaders then come together, American tech leaders, they come together and they say, we've had enough of this problem. We've had enough of this problem, so we're going to get together and we're going to decide, what do we agree on, right? Because we can't keep all hiring people for different ways. It's just so ineffective. And why shouldn't the person at my company leave to go to your company eventually? And that pool of information is going to be better for everyone over the longer term. So how do we kind of streamline the way of thinking and way of being that is successful, so that we can all be more successful quicker? Yeah. So they come together. The first meeting was in the woods, and in the woods they decided on 4 statements that kind of become the norms of a team. We're going to get into that in just a minute. These 4 statements that become the behavior norms, right? Do this above that, right? You should value this over doing this thing. You should value interactions and the individuals that you work with over the process and the tools. Yeah. So that's all good. That's the year 2000. In 2001, they get back together and they say there's 12 signs of success that when you behave this way, if you are also seeing these indicators, you're going to be onto a very good thing. And they all agree on that as leading people in the tech scene that have their own companies. So they agreed. This is what they now call the Agile Manifesto. All it is a set of behavior norms and a set of 12 principles. We'll get into that in just a moment, but I want to leave you in this section knowing that Winston Royce, who made Waterfall get so big, right? He actually had much more foresight than what I'm giving him credit for. And what you can see if you really flick through his paper is that he did think about iterations, and he did think that you needed to iterate every step along the way to make sure that things were properly integrated. For whatever reason, that was not found. For whatever reason, the world focused on this slide instead of this one. I'm not sure. It's a pretty dense document with loads of diagrams. So potentially someone didn't make it that far, right? But yeah, anyway. So into Agile. So Agile, what is it? Like I just said a moment ago, in the year 2000, 16 tech leaders got together for the first time, and they said, look, there's too many different approaches, different ways of working, different ways of thinking in this industry. And what that means is when we're trying to hire people, when we're trying to get them to hit the ground running quickly, make impact fast, what we're finding is it's just taking them ages to try and understand, like, how do we work, how I think, it's just taking them too long to understand how to become valuable for the organization. So we need to get together, we need to solve this problem. And also we can share a lot of lessons about how to make successful software and tech businesses. Because if one of us in the industry gets bigger and learns new things, that's going to be a benefit to everyone. People that actually bring the knowledge to those companies and do the real work, they might want to leave after some time and have a new challenge. So that knowledge is going to flow. So we might as well all agree and acknowledge that this is the reality. We do share a pool of people, and we might as well have that optimized and streamlined in the most effective way so that we can all grow and share the best knowledge that works, together. So that's what they did. In the first meeting in the year 2000, they got together and they decided these 4 statements. We believe in individuals and interactions over process and tools. We believe that you should focus on getting something working and out the door rather than just documenting it. We believe that you should collaborate with your customers instead of just negotiating with them. And we believe you should be looking at what changes you can make to adapt your plan to make it more effective instead of just rigidly following the plan. Yeah. And if you go deep on these one by one, and you think, how does that actually change the way you function? How does that actually change the way you interact? Now, how many times do you get an email from someone that's sitting opposite you, right, or just down the corridor, for example? And what is it about the system and structure around the way that you work that encourages you to send an email when you could just go and have a chat with someone, or fill out this form, or lots of ways of making teams of people behave more effectively together is about people treating each other as people and having proper human interactions instead of seeing them as like a object that just needs to do the work that they send them and work through like a robot. We're not robots, we're humans. Anyway, we'll move on. So also good focus is for these teams to focus on getting something done, right? Are you spending time just documenting what needs to happen or spending time documenting what the solution looked like? Or should you actually just be making something? For example, you can do mock-ups and wireframes on paper, and that's a great way to start. When it gets to a certain point, you have a choice. You can either start to make mock-ups that are not in the actual website, or what you could do is make some unseen pages of a website and do your mock-ups live in that website. That way, when you're getting feedback from people, it's much quicker. So you missed out this step of making the UI only front ends, right? And therefore, you don't need that documentation. You just need that working product. So let's just jump that step and go straight to that. One example. Collaborating over negotiation, I think that's pretty simple, isn't it? It's not about, yes, but you said this. It's about saying, okay, well, what do you need and how can we adjust and what will really work best for you? And responding to changeover following a plan is pretty much that, right? You should be sensing and adapting in the work that you're doing, not just rigidly delivering it because it's what you've been told to do or what should happen or because it's in the 3-month plan or whatever it is. The information that you find as you're doing the work or as you're servicing the teams of people that are doing the work or as you're nurturing the organization, the information that you find needs to flow back into that organization as quickly as possible so that it can be most effective. So you can bring these to life. They're more than just statements. They become the norms, the behavior norms of a team, right? And they're not going to happen by accident just because you say to people they're agile now. They're going to happen because there's a right system and structure that hangs around them that allows them to behave in this way. Then they got together in the next year, right? In 2001, the same 16 tech leaders, they came together and they said, look, we agree on these 4 products, these 4 statements in the middle, these 4 behavior norms. Can we also agree on what are those indicators of success as we go? And they've come up with a bunch from here. I've made a bit of a diagrammatical visual of them all. But as you can see, they're all here and they're sensible things like, as we know, the turtle beat the hare. So a sustainable pace is what's most important. We also need to make sure that we deliver to the shortest time scale. It's not about saying it will be 2 weeks or a week. It's like, what's the most important thing we need to do? How long is that time box? It doesn't have to be a week. It can be 5 hours if you want it to be. What's the one thing we need to do right now? Let's get it done as quickly as possible. And then we can look at the next thing, It's about a sustainable pace. So we make sure that time is not going to break our back, but we also want to make sure that it's the shortest time. And that having that balance of those polarities, those different pressures, that's how you get a quality outcome, right? You need to have those 2 poles. And there's lots more here. We obviously want to make sure that you get a self-organizing team shares one way of kind of being together, one way of thinking, one way of understanding. They're all on the same page and that they all understand the vision for their product. We know it's about speaking to people directly. We know it's about making sure people are motivated, that the environment suits them and that they've got support all the time. We know that we need to make sure that we don't do everything all at once. We're just doing the most important things. We know we need to deliver all the time and as early as possible. We also know that number one thing is the working output. Also we need to make sure that the technical excellence and the design of it is what will give us proper agility in the way we're building the product. And the fact that we can stand back and look at ourselves openly and honestly in the mirror and reflect That is vital for the way that we work. As I was saying a minute ago, that feedback's got to feed back into the organization so that they can learn quickly. So in a nutshell, that's all Agile is. Agile is just a set of behavior norms and 12 principles. That's it. What has come to light is that within this way of being as a team and within being an organization that values these 12 principles as their signs and indicators of success, how do you bring that to life? What's the tools? What's the frameworks? What's the methods? What's the techniques? And ultimately, there's no one answer to that. Anything, all of it, use it all. Does it work? Does it allow you to behave this way? Does it allow you to march towards these as your signs of success? If so, crack on. So we're going to go into framework land now. Framework land is Scrum. Bear with me, I'm just going to get a sip of water. Scrum's probably the most popular one. Everyone seems to have heard about it now. And this is what we're going to go through is just team level Scrum. We're not going to go through Scrum at scale or less or any or Nexus or anything, any other of those scaling methods. And the reason why I huff and puff there is because scaling methods are important. It's good definitely to see what has worked in other contexts, but the scaling of an agile organization is going to be very context dependent. Like I said, it's very much about the feedback and the learning of that context. And it's not about the framework or the tools or the methods. It's about those behavior norms and those 12 success indicators. So you don't need a scaling method. You need to learn your context and you need to scale the basic principles of agility within that context. So I personally don't believe in scaling frameworks because it means that you're going to be tempted to cookie cutter apply things directly to your organization. You'd be scared of making any customizations. Plus, if you do start making customizations and it's not your expertise, you could get into sticky waters, of course. So anyway, team level Scrum, Scrum that can be scaled. What is it? It's a framework that is based on developing things within an agile way of being as a team and those 12 indicators of success. That means everything is time boxed. Every meeting is time boxed. Every period of time which you're hoping to deliver an end outcome of value to customers is time boxed too. It's very transparent. It's based on inspection and adaptation. Transparency means we all understand the same words, especially what does done mean, what does ready mean. We also want to understand that we know the impact of the work that we're trying to create, and we want to understand that that impact meets the goal that we've said we're going to work on for that time period. And we also then want to make sure that we can adapt. Because we're inspecting often, we can make the little adaptations that matter most. Who is right to work in this way? Successful teams of people that are committed to each other, are focused, open, have courage, and can be respectful. So if you're not that type of person, or that they are not your natural tendencies when you're working with teams of people, probably not the best environment for you as a person or for the teams of people that you might be working with. It's a good one to flag. Main roles. You have a product owner, you have a Scrum Master, and you have a development team. And they are all within the same team. Product owner is not outside the team. They're in the team. Development team isn't outside the product owner. They are all together as one with the Scrum Master because they're all working for the same end outcomes together, right? It's all for the same customer. It's all for the same company. They are working together as a team of equals to get what they need to done in the most effective way to continue and so that they can continue to learn. How do they do that? They have these events. They have the sprint itself, which is we're going to deliver these outcomes in the next 5 hours, 1 week, 2 weeks, 1 month. They then get together and they plan and they build out this backlog, this list of things to do for that sprint, for that time box. And then as they go through, every day they meet as a scrum, just like rugby teams. And for less than 15 minutes, they'll just talk about, okay, what's the most important thing we need to do today? How can we work well together? Is there anything that we're stuck on that we need to talk about? If so, we can plan when and how we're going to get that support today, because we need to organize around what's most important right now, today, every day to be most effective, and we need to share the learnings from the day before. Then at the end of that sprint, that time box that you've chosen, we're going to take a stand back for a moment and say, look, okay, we're a team of this composition and this organization. This is our performance metrics. And this is how we've done over the last period of time. And we know that we meet every day, we have a backlog, we have a product, Then we have a discussion about how can we just get better at making effective products in a time-bound fashion for our end customers. Yeah. And then also at the end of a sprint, you review what's actually been done, the work that you've been working on, and you should be ready to demonstrate that to customers at the end of the sprint, at least, if not before. You can obviously demo a product and get a review with your stakeholders as soon as it's done. There's no point waiting. You know, if you've decided for some reason that your sprint's 2 weeks and you got something done within 2 days, go and demo it now. Get the feedback ASAP, because by the end of those 2 weeks, you might have been able to get several rounds of feedback, and then the product is going to be higher quality, quicker, and out the door quicker, and you can be on to the next thing sooner. So it kind of makes sense. There might be a knock-on impact in the organization, people's time, blah, blah, blah. You've got to do what's right for the context at the end of the day. But it's good to just apply this pressure, because we're just here to do things for the end customer in the most optimal way, and we're all here doing it together. So it becomes like a game that we're all in together as equals. The artifacts along the way, you've got your product backlog for all the things in the world that we could work on to deliver our product and the improvements to the end customer, the features to the end customer. Then we've got the things we're going to work on in that period of time we've said, hopefully for a releasable product. And then when we've actually finished doing that, we do have an increment that is complete, that's ready to go to a product, to a customer. And that's what you call the increment. So we've got the product backlog, everything in the world, sprint backlog, the next bit stuff, the increment, the things we've just got done that we want to release. Yeah, simple stuff. So some of you, if you're brand new to this, you're probably a bit, crazy-eyed right now, a bit like the snake in Jungle Book, or a bit like the background of Austin Powers. But for you people that are more familiar with this is kind of basic stuff, isn't it? You're probably not even watching by now. So for those of you that are confused or that would like to hear my explanation of this, we're going to go through now into how those roles come to life. Ultimately, this team of equals get together. And first of all, they build their product backlog. And as you can see, these are really the steps they're taking, right? These 4 steps. Their work is going to start here in the product backlog, move into the sprint backlog. They're going to move one item at a time, because I only want one work in progress item at a time. And then they'll move one thing to done. Then they'll move on the next item, done. Then move on the next item, one in progress, done. Yeah? How does that work? So, and who does it work with and for? So this is what we'll see. We've got a product owner, Scrum Master, development team. They're going through this cycle of taking the product backlog into a sprint backlog. They get standing around it every day like we were just discussing. Then they're going to have their sprint review, which we were just discussing, the demos and the demonstrations of the real product that you've been making to get feedback from the proper customer that it's for. And then you've got the way of standing back, looking at how you're working, all the things that are coming together and making the subtle adjustments that are needed. And then you go start again, right? Back to the next sprint. And so often you would try and have the planning, the review and the retro quite closely together so that you're stopping and starting hand in hand and there's no gap. So it's continuous. The product owner is responsible for the product backlog, right? They're going to just get a solid vision that's painted in the customer's eyes, hopefully a customer journey, hopefully customer personas, hopefully a product vision. And then they're going to break that down into a way of approaching, developing that life cycle for the customer so that the releases land in the most optimal kind of way for the customer experience. The development team will help them shape what that looks like, but predominantly to get the ball rolling, the product owner is going to have to apply their own passions, experience, insights, creative problem solving part of their brains. Yeah. So they'll get the backlog ready. They'll join sprint planning. The team will then understand how to break that work down. The team will then stand up every day in the daily scrum. The team includes the product owner, don't forget. And then they'll all go into the sprint review together, all in the sprint retrospective. What you can see is I've not highlighted that they're vital for these 2 bits, because when you leave sprint planning, you've already had a lot of feedback between the development team and the product owner there. So the product owner after that point in time should be able to leave the team to it, really. And they will attend the daily scrum because it's only less than 15 minutes. And they'll be there if they have any questions, if they can support. But they're just going to be there unless for the team to lean on them. Yeah. If the product owner wants to set up time with people to refine some of these items because there's another sprint coming up, that's okay. You can make the request there, or she can book the meeting separately. And again, it's probably good to agree how you're going to nurture this backlog together so that we don't take too much time away from the people that are adding the value to the customer journey, you know? So big part of a sprint review for a product owner, big role to play there. You need to get the customer audience together. You need to figure out the best way of demonstrating that product. And it's okay to lean on the tech team, the development team, to actually demonstrate the product place. It's going to be a lot better coming from yourself. Similarly, the retrospective, you play a key role there as an equal member of the team. The development team, therefore, they're involved in all of this, all right? They're going to help shape the next coming up items of the product backlog. They're definitely going to have a heavy hand in sprint planning, understanding how they're going to take those outcomes and make them possible together. They're going to have a very heavy hand in a daily scrum because they're going to be busy solving problems together and finding the most optimal ways of doing things and having a bit of a laugh, having a bit of fun. They're going to then get into their sprint review. And in their sprint review, they will be kind of showcasing to the product owner, this is what we've done. And the product owner will then think about how they connect those messages to their proper stakeholders. If not, actually just invite them all into one session together. They will also play a heavy part in sprint retrospective because they are the ones that are doing the real doing, and the system around them that brings them work and allows them to release work and gets them to understand what it is, why it is that they need to do, and it paints the norms of how their team is able to work together. They're all outside of their actual job that they're there to do. So they have to bring their information about the wider organization and their thoughts on what might help their bit by changing the things above them, And then you've got the Scrum Master, who is going to be really focused on this process, these activities, right? How does this flow of information actually go from being a product backlog in the mind of a product owner to being a real tangible product in the hands of a customer? And how does this team of people keep getting better and better at how they're able to produce outcomes by changing the dynamic of the organization, by feeding back in the organization about various experiments they would like to see because they think those experiments would have an impact on their ability to deliver for the end customer. In a nutshell, that's Scrum. Scrum is just some roles, a method, artifacts, events, and some values here of commitment, respect, courage, focus, and openness. Very good values. All right, so that's Scrum in a nutshell. Kanban. Can you? First thing to note is, yes, there's a history to Kanban. Yes, there's a lot to it. Yes, there's loads of rules and methods, and there's a pull system. And we're not going to get into an advanced version of Kanban right now. What we are going to do is just understand how it maps back to Agile and how it can become useful for Agile teams at a very fundamental, basic team level. So, first of all, Agile is just a tool. Sorry, Kanban is just a tool for Agile. Agile is just a set of behavior norms and 12 indicators of success that allow you to know that you're pushing in the right direction in the right way. Kanban is just a method, right? It's a set process. Do this thing first, second, third, fourth, fifth. It's very prescribed in what you need to do and how you need it to work. And it's a continuous delivery method. What it means is it's normally used in factories, and it's going to help you continuously deliver your product, see the constraints, organize around them, solve the bottlenecks, help things flow faster and smoother, continuously improve that process. Yeah. In Kanban, there's no time box, it's continuous, which means you would need to figure out when you need to do your planning, when you need to stand up and have solving complexities from the day together. You need to decide when you're going to have your reviews, when you're going to stop to have a retrospective and see how you can improve as a team too. So Kanban is so continuous in its nature that the rest of the process needs to be sensed and adapted to what's right for the team, depending on what experience they're going through and the state of readiness and quality that's baked into their work. So it requires a more advanced level, in my opinion, of understanding of Agile ways of working. And it definitely applies more understanding of how to empower teams so that they can actually understand for themselves how to improve and understand what it is that they're doing and how it is that they're working and why things can be looked at differently especially in terms of the experimentations that they can run. In Kanban, you don't just have this big work in progress column, you break it down into the value adding steps left to right that will get it out the door, right? So, you know, arguably test and develop it is the wrong way around here. What you should be doing really is going from a product backlog, making the design, failing the test for the development first of all, and hopefully that's an automated test that fails. Then you can develop the code that needs to pass that test. That will come with the automation test, and then straight away, bang, it's ready for release. And you can pop it through your various environments after that point in time with whatever changes you want to go with it. You would need more columns, obviously, for each of those environments after the release backlog. But it's kind of good like that, Kanban. It really breaks down concisely where the state of the work is and what steps you need to take. And if you're the release manager looking at the release backlog, you can just look in the column next door to you, whether it's test or develop, whatever it is, you just look at the column next to where your work normally comes. And as soon as there's an item there, you know there's someone to talk to about work that might be coming your way. So it was also a signal, working in Kanban. It's a signal of communication that's required. It's a communication of what's coming your way soon and what you need to be prepared for. And also, what can I do to make life easier for you? And that's kind of how you negotiate or collaborate on each of those columns. And as a team, it just becomes really self-organizing, self-flowing, because everyone understands like what's the purpose of each of the columns and how they need to work best together. They also inspect and adapt. It's also based on transparency, and we really want to limit the amount of work that's in any of these columns at any time. Because if obviously, like a traffic jam, if you've got too many items in the same place, if you've got too many cars in the same place, you're going to have a congested moment where there's not enough capacity, there's no space for even a slow trickle of water to pass through. So because there's no space, there's no flow. So what we need to do is limit the amount that we have in progress so that we can actually get a good flow through the system. That's why we normally say work on one thing at a time. Yeah, but depending on the layout of your team and the needs of your product, you will design your team in the most optimal way to allow flow. And within that, you'll also think about what your work in progress needs to be as a result of that. And it's all learning, it's all adaptation. So that was a very whistle-stop tour of Kanban. Hope you've enjoyed it. Don't forget, for those of you that are watching all of this video, so we've covered the background of Agile, we've covered what actually is it, what is Agile, we've actually covered what is Scrum, we've also covered what is Kanban. And so now all there is left to do really is rejoice, party, right? Enjoy the learning that you're going to go through, because this way of working, it does require lots of reflection, lots of shared open collaboration and discussion. It creates a lot of safe environments, and someone's kind of got to create those spaces for people. And so for me, a lot of what Agile does is break down those formal work barriers, doesn't it? You know, because what's the point? What's the point in going to work and just bringing in 20% of your personality? Bring all of yourself in, bring all of your experiences in, bring all of your insights in, and be open to more. And then you'll have a richer sense of life within yourself, because you've empathized with much more areas of life, and you're not restricting yourself to being a certain way or talking a certain way or playing games about your progression versus someone else's progression, or who looks better or what division's performing. Agile removes all of that, in my opinion, if it's done correctly, and it gets you to think about we are equals, solving problems for our customer, because this company wants to grow, and the only way it can grow is to do better things for the end customer. So gets us all focused on what really matters. So obviously Agile is massive, it's in all of these companies and more. And so if you ever doubt that this can be effective, just have a look at the last 20 years and see what companies have scaled fast, how technology has kind of taken over the world, what methods they've used to do so, what ways of thinking they've used to do so. It's not all under the hood. It's not all just the way their organization is structured inside the company. It's also about the communications and the promotion, the advertising, the branding, of course, all of which, when you look at it, will follow a very agile way of thinking. So only last thing to say is hit that button, hit that subscribe button. Click some of the links below this video. What you're going to find is a link to the book, a link to this startup or accelerator program. Doesn't matter what your size of business is, to be honest with you, because I've worked with, or even if you're a college or a school and you want to improve not your bottom line or your customer audience, but just your ability to serve your young people. What I'm saying is, if you need to grow your context, whether it's revenue, whether it's customer satisfaction, whether it is the ability to teach kids more effectively, whatever it is, we can optimize that system. That's what I'm an expert in. So, and that's what I've got credentials and experience that can be validated in. You can validate it, have a look at my LinkedIn, see what I've been getting up to, read it all, drop me a message, have a look at the book, go on the ABC Agile website, check out the book. I think at the moment it is $39.99, something like that. Let's see. $39.99. It's a 3-day book, which is like over 200 pages. It's A4. It gives you how to train people and therefore exercises to go through for yourself. And you can literally use that material to train agile coaches in a 3-day intensive workshop, which is very hands-on, very fun, really, and also very effective in terms of the learning that you capture. Anyway, the link will be down there for those two things. And I'll also include the LinkedIn in there, just so you can reach out to me whenever you want. Wicked. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day. And, subscribe, hit the links below, and share the video with a friend if you think they'll find it useful. Wicked. Thank you. Bye-bye.